This probably goes without saying, but Super Meat Boy is not only one of the greatest indie games of all time, but one of the greatest platformers of all time. When it first came out, the landscape was entirely different. The indie scene was nothing like it is today, and there was nowhere near the amount of throwback games paying homage to the classics. Super Meat Boy broke the mold by not only making a big impact upon its release, but by helping to usher in a new era of hard-as-balls precision platformers, as well as show that indie games can make just as much of an impact on the industry as AAA titles. Super Meat Boy was, and still is, a really big deal to gaming as a whole, and the market left is undeniable. Since the game came out a decade ago, we saw lots of great stuff coming out of those who worked on the game, most notable probably being The Binding of Isaac. Despite the splash it made and the cult following that formed in its wake, years went by without word of a sequel, until one day about 6 years ago, Super Meat Boy Forever was announced, much to the confusion of a lot of people. Instead of being a straight-up precision platformer, Meat Boy Forever would have many of the same elements as the original game, but now in the form of a simplified auto-runner with randomized level layouts for each run. Hence the name. Now, I myself was pretty taken aback by this. Not necessarily entirely put off, I didn't have any problem with them experimenting with the series, but I saw this announcement under the impression that it would be a spin-off of sorts. Apparently, it wasn't, because 6 long years went by and the game just now finally got released. Hey, real quick, if you like the video, consider subscribing. It's honestly shocking how much of a difference it makes when people actually subscribe, so if you like what you see and you want to see more, click the subscribe button to see when I upload. Now, I will say, at the beginning of 2020, before the world turned into whatever it turned into this year, back when we could, do things, I tried the game out at PAX, and I was extremely impressed. Sure, it wasn't the same Super Meat Boy I knew, but it was just as challenging and kept the same spirit I remembered when I first played the game, and despite not being all too excited for the game prior, I actually started really looking forward to it. Well, it's out now, and I have some mixed feelings about it. Now, don't get me wrong, I want to preface this whole thing by saying I do like the game. Quite a lot, actually. It's very challenging and fun. I think it's a good and well-made game in its own right, but I don't think it's any kind of substitute for a true sequel, and the more I play of it, the more I realize how much it really doesn't echo the same care and quality that went into the original game. Let me explain. So to get this out there right away, the game's presentation is amazing, a huge step up from the original game. All the artwork is so clean and well done, and the cutscenes and animations are all top-notch. Under the hood, though, this is a very different beast than what came before it. I'm no programmer or game designer, but I like to think that I do have a brain, and I think that I've been able to pinpoint the issue I'm having with Super Meat Boy Forever. Basically, each new playthrough starts off with a seed, and from there, all the levels are generated, making each playthrough a unique and new experience, so you can quite literally play it forever. It even has the Dark World stages and collectibles you'd expect to see if you're coming from the first game. The main problem here, though, comes from the random nature of it, because these levels are all essentially created and strung together by an algorithm. In an excerpt from a redbull.com article, Tommy Refines, the lead programmer of the game, explained that in order to present a challenge to even the most competent players, rather than offering prefab levels that have been the backbone of platformers since Super Mario Bros., the studio decided to build the levels algorithmically based on the player's skill level. Each individual segment is hand-designed, then given a difficulty rating, and the game's levels sift through them in real time and serves them up. Now, this is an amazing concept for a game that can literally never truly end, but in comparison to its predecessor, a game whose levels were all painstakingly crafted and curated for a specific intended experience, Super Meat Boy Forever often feels much less polished in its level design. Taking all issues anyone may have about auto-running mechanics out of the equation, I think this is the single biggest issue I have with the game. The levels just don't seem intentional. They don't seem like someone's vision. They're all doable and clearly all have a predetermined path to take, but there's this cohesiveness that I can't help but feel like this game is sorely lacking. A lot of the level design just feels a bit sloppy and, well, strung together. And I mean, duh. Yeah, this goes without saying, but once again, it just really doesn't feel very intentional. This isn't necessarily a bad thing when viewed in a vacuum, but with the original Super Meat Boy to live up to, this is by no means a substitute for a true sequel. Now, I still need to play more of it, and there's no doubt in my mind that I still will continue to like it, quite a lot, but after an entire decade, we should have had a true Super Meat Boy 2. I would have gladly accepted this game as a really good spin-off in between mainline releases, and so far, it remains remains to be seen that this is the case. In the back of my mind, I'm holding on to hope that maybe Team Meat has something up their sleeve and that a true successor is just over the horizon, but I'm not holding my breath. Also, the fact that the development cycle of this game took as long as it did only helped to exacerbate the issue. If this game came out like 4 years ago and we got a Super Meat Boy 2 today, or even in a year or so from now, I'd have absolutely no complaints. But for now, and judging by the scores it's already getting, this is a game that's gonna be judged by its predecessor and development cycle as opposed to its own merits, and that's honestly pretty sad. Look, I'm not going to tell you not to pick up Super Meat Boy forever, because it's honestly really good and really fun. Just don't go into it itching for more of the first game, because that's not what you're getting here. If anything, honestly, and I made a video about it back when it came out, but the closest thing to a Super Meat Boy sequel or a spiritual successor you're going to get right now is The End Is Nigh by former Team Meat developer and co-Meat Boy creator Ed McMillan. It definitely isn't the same game, and it experiments with its own unique mechanics, but in terms of level design, challenge, and keeping the same spirit as the original game, I'd say The End Is Nigh is probably your best bet right now, if you haven't already played that anyway. And it's a good bet too, because that game is incredible. With all this being said, I do think Super Meat Boy Forever is worth picking up. It really is a good game that's packed with seemingly endless content, and also it's like the perfect pick up and play game for the Nintendo Switch specifically. Just make sure you curb any expectations you may have first.